heavy duty learning, and my success, we'll get to that later, but my success with Ralph Lauren has very much to do with how I was trained by Alan.
And groomed at Mr. Flusser shop.
100%.
Yeah, Mr. Flusser, like I said, I have, everything he's ever written, I have it. I mean, he's, Mr. Flusser's Mr. Flusser. Like, what he's done in menswear is just, like, amazing. And the fact, you worked with him, because until we really started building, I didn't know, I had only knew you from Ralph. And I was just like, this dude this is the best dressed guy. Everything he's wearing, I needed in my life. Literally. So I think that's amazing. So you worked with Mr. Flusser. How long were you with Mr. Flusser?
I was with Alan for 2 years, and then from Alan, I went to work in it was a kind of a combination of jobs. I was a tie designer for 2 years with a gentleman called Jerry Myers, and then from the tie designer, I went into doing fabric design and sales. So that when I was doing within that period, I met one of the head creative people in Ralph, and just like in Brooks Brothers, he said, "Oh, you have such taste and stuff, and you're all dressed. You have to come and meet Ralph." And so I went to meet Ralph, and at the time the company was very, very small, and I walked into the room, and Ralph had on jodhpurs and riding boots, and it was like walking into an old movie, and I liked him, and we had a connection automatically. Sure. He said, "When can you?" Well, he asked me to do a project. Okay. And so I did this small project. Oh, this is really bringing back memories of the Cary Grant S, the apparel arts, and I was a fine arts minor before I even went into fashion, so it was very easy for me to do the project. And Ralph hired me as a designer. Period. That's it.
So when he had the opportunity to meet you, because this was obviously some time ago, how has and this is something I'm curious about. How has your sense of style changed? Like, what did John look like then? Like, was it like,
when I first went to work, I think one of the things that, Ralph appreciated was my, the old school charm. And, I actually had vintage Anderson and Shepherd top coat, a polka dot scarf. Even at the time, I had a pair of shoes from Cleverly, custom made. So when I walked in, I was sold. Yeah. I sold myself.
George Cleverly?
Yeah. So, I kind of fit the part 100%. And he, when he put me in clothing automatically, tailored clothing. So that was great.
So so he puts you in tailored clothing. You design for how many years? Do you design there?
Because
I know you obviously...
No, I started out as in tailored clothing, and, then I became... Well, it was tailored clothing concept designer. I was really the first group that actually designed a concept.
Okay, no, that makes sense.
My position grew, and, but I really always did the same thing. I only ever did design. I really was never a good manager, but I was always a good designer.
Good. It's interesting to hear you say that too, because even as a creative, I feel I am horrible at. It's just funny to hear you say that, because I feel like I'm horrible at like managing. Like I'm like one of the absolute worst at it. I like forget everything. Yeah. It's the worst. It's just funny to hear you say that. So you do design. Now, when did the opportunity for Purple Label? How did that come
I can tell you. This is an interesting story, and I'm not really speaking out of school, so even if Ralph listens to this. So I was working in Polo, and we were designing, and I had a concept. Now this could be, I had a concept of, I wanted to do my own label. Okay, and it was sort of a Ralph Lauren-esque, but it was very modern. And I created my whole story, and I had a gentleman in New York do this book for me. And, at the time I didn't have a lot of money, and he asked me for money, to pay for it. And I paid him, and he kept constantly asking me for money for the project. And I'm like, I can't pay anymore. So this is a nightmare. This gentleman decides to send my book to Ralph. So I live in New Jersey at the time. I'm driving through the Lincoln Tunnel. I get a phone call in the tunnel, and you barely can hear. On the phone is Ralph, and he says, "John, can you come down to my office?" I said, "Ralph, I can't. I'm in the tunnel. I mean, when I get out, I could turn around and come back in.
Sure.
He said, no, we'll talk on Monday. So now I have 2 little kids, and I have the head of the world, according to my world,
Sure.
wanting to see me on Monday morning. And he comes in and he says to me, you know, I know you want to leave. I said, well, how would you know that? He said, because I have this book.
Oh my God.
So I said, okay. I said, I want to start another line. He said, well, we'll do it here. And we created Black Label.
Oh.
And I did the font, the Ralph Lauren font, and that's how Black Label started.
Wow. Now that is interesting because I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was the same font, and it was very much, how do we strip everything down and just get to the essentials? This is even before minimalism.
Okay.
We wanted to just get down to the most pure form of fashion. And that's when we created Black Label.
Man. So Black Label came first.
Yes.
Okay, so you do Black Label, that gets released.
Yes.
And after that was obviously successful.
Yeah.
So is that how we got to Purple Label?
No, so now this could be argued.
Okay.
I had an idea of making the best suit in the world.
Okay.
And going back to the roots of Ralph Lauren, but in a more, you know, his concept is obviously very English and British and all of that.
Sure.
But I felt we can do it, you know, because at the time, still today, the best tailored clothing is made in Italy. So we would make everything in Italy. We won't make it domestically. And we would even do it more English than English.
Okay.
Like really go back to like, you know, that apparel arts thing and
Sure.
really like make the shoulders and, you know, do the whole number. It was a group idea, but
Okay.
give Ralph credit for it. That's Ralph's story.
Sure.
I can take some credit for the Black Label, and then I was in charge of then Black Label and Purple Label. And polo tailored clothing at the time.
Now, when I was working when I was employed with Ralph Lauren, I used to wear a lot of at that time, I want to say Corneliani was
Yes.
doing the polo
Yes.
tailored clothing.
Yes.
Great suit. That was like one of the first pieces I ever got.
Well, the reason why we used to have a factory in outside of Boston.
Okay.
And that was actually the first company that Ralph made his suit, and it was called Lanning at the time. I think I said the name correctly, I'm not sure. But anyway, Ralph then bought the factory.
Okay.
So for many years, we made all the clothing domestically for Ralph Lauren. I'm talking about tailored clothing.
Sure.
And then we had to close the factory because of unions and because of the price of the way the world is.
Sure.
You know, and then we started making it in Corneliani.
Yeah, so you did Corneliani, you had Black Label, Purple Label. Now let's talk about, because a lot of individuals, I obviously don't know too many people that have achieved, you know, a lot of the things you are. What is the day-to-day operation for a gentleman in that space, a creative director going to the office every day? What does that consist of?
I can tell you, it's really, you know, when, you know, at the time, by the time I left Ralph Lauren, the business was about $17 billion. So the good thing about Ralph Lauren, in creating his world, there's very few people that are in design.
Okay.
So it's a big funnel. So you have a zillion ideas that come in and have to be narrowed down. And then you have these group of very few designers, 3 or 4 of us, that are in charge of the next group. And then it funnels down to Ralph, who ultimately makes the decision. So any design decision at the end of the day, and I'm not going to minimize this, goes through Ralph, and Ralph decides on everything in the company, but he has help, and that's how you build a business.
Sure.
But the day-to-day is creativity by demand, not creativity by inspiration, where you can see, you know, you're inspired, but you have to produce.
Yeah.
The good thing is, in doing that, you really, really learn how to design. Like, interesting enough, jumping ahead, once I left Ralph Lauren and I started doing my own label and I was doing the Schiaparelli thing,
Sure.
not to go that forward, and they said, well, how many people do you need? I'm like, 1. You know, like, well, who does sweaters?
Right.
I do. Who does tailored clothing? I do. Who does outerwear? I do. I just needed one assistant to take notes and work with me, but I don't really need anybody else. Production and all of that, obviously you need staff, but the good thing, it was a very hands-on, and you learn how to do it. There's no pretend.
Sure.
There's no pretend designers there.
Sure.
It's like you really learn how to design clothes.
Now, and we've talked about this before, and I'd like for you to expound on it because, modern day or, modern times, I feel creative director is a term used super loosely now. Mm-hmm. Back in the day, 10, 15 years ago, if you said I was a creative director, people weren't using that term as much. Creative director, like, what does it mean to you, one, and two, what type of credentials in your opinion, would you think someone needed to be considered like a legitimate creative director?
I think as a creative director, whatever the brand might be, I don't care if it's Balenciaga, I don't care if it's Yeezy, I don't care what the brand is, and I'm not just saying that because of the Yeezy Gap thing. Sure. But I'm just saying that